Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm going to be telling you about the 5 books that I read in the first half of May. The first book that I read in May is Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo, and this comes out in August. This tells the story of Diana, who of course becomes Wonder Woman later on, as she basically risks exile from her Amazon island to save a mortal girl named Alia, who happened to land there because her boat blew up. And it turns out that Alia is a warbringer, which is basically a descendant of Helen of Troy, who brings about war and conflict just by existing. So there are a lot of people after Alia who want to use her ability, etc., etc., like before she can actually go to this place where she can get rid of it. I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was full of diverse characters and really empowering messages that were so, so great to see in a book aimed at teens. And I will go further in depth into that in my full review of this book when it comes out. But then the only thing that I thought was kind of a weak point of this book is the villains, because the entire time Diana and Alia's friends are running away from pretty much a faceless enemy. All they know is that people are after Alia. They don't really we don't get a whole lot of background about how anyone knew that she was a warbringer and what they want to use her for and why, or any of that stuff. And then by the time we actually get a face and a name to tie to all that stuff that's going on, basically it ends up being like my least favorite villain trope ever. I thought that the villains could have been done so much better, because it had a lot more potential, but overall this was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a super important book that I wish had existed when I was 20 and 21, because I really could have used it back then. The next book that I read in May is Odd and True by Kat Winters, and this tells the story of 2 sisters named Odd and True, or Odette and Chudhyun, who live in the early 1900s in Portland. And Odd, who is several years older than Chudhyun, she was 6 or something when True was born, and then she grew up telling True these fairy tales and all this stuff and all these stories, and said that they were true. And then when True is too young to remember, Odd gets kicked out of the house, and then 2 years later, she comes back, says, "Hi True, happy 15th birthday. Just so you know, I've been hunting monsters the past couple years, and that's what our mother did and is still doing off somewhere, and that is what our grandmother did as well, and now that you're 15, I need you to come and help me fight monsters." And True, who was crippled by polio, kind of goes, "Well, I'm not so sure about going on a adventure and not taking my wheelchair. It's gonna be kind of hard." But Odd says, "Well, I'll take care of you. Let's just go." So True says, "Yeah, let's go." So they go off, and basically, this is narrated in dual perspectives. Odd tells the flashbacks every other chapter, and True narrates the present. And basically, we have 2 highly unreliable narrators who think they're perfectly reliable, and this is just such a great, compelling story about sisterhood and about, all kinds of stuff that you just have to get away from reality, because reality is so much worse than the monsters that could be out there. I can't really go super in depth into this without spoiling a whole bunch of crap, because this is one of those books that you just need to go into not knowing a whole lot about, I feel like. But basically, if you're looking for something hella paranormal, this is not the book for that. Just because it focuses on so much else besides all the paranormal aspects. But I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was just so good. The next 2 books that I read this month were audiobooks, the first of which was The Gilded Cage by Vic James. And this basically takes place in an alternate reality Great Britain, in which everyone has to, at some point during their lives, spend 10 years as a slave. And so you can wait until you're older to do it, but basically that would not give you the rights that come along with having done it, because there are a whole bunch of rights that you just don't get as a citizen if you haven't done it yet. But so it's basically you could also just do it like at 10 years old and not not be putting your life on hold as much, but then you actually kind of are, because you'd pretty much be like 20 by the time you were done. So it's kind of a like really fucked up world. And the only people who are exempt from the slave thing are the equals, who are basically these people who have these magical abilities that are kind of like the Lunar Chronicles abilities, but way creepier and more hardcore, I guess. And basically it follows mostly this one family who of like 3 kids and 2 parents, and like they all decide to go and do their 10 years as a slave at the same time, now that the youngest child has turned 10. So a whole bunch of crazy stuff happens. That's pretty much like the gist of it. And so I really would have liked to see some more background, I think, on the world and why it is like that, because we really don't get enough of that. Maybe in the second book we will. And then also, the characters are pretty generic. They're not like anything special, but I think that's actually what the book was probably going for, is what I'm guessing. Just because it reminded me a little bit of 1984 that way, how the people are kind of generic. It's mostly about what happens to them. And also the fact that, like, it could be you or anyone you know if you lived in this world, if this was your reality, that kind of thing. So it kind of made it, like, a lot more interesting. But then also we don't get to see the magic system as much as we're like told about it. Like, we're told about it way more often than we actually see it. And I think that it was actually kind of a good thing, because it made it a lot creepier. And so basically this book was just super creepy and really weird, and I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it was really good. So I would say if you've read like 1984 and Brave New World already, like, and are looking for something more along those lines, like, this is totally the book for you. The next audiobook that I listened to is I Am Princess X by Cherie Priest, and this is about these 2 girls who create this comic together about this character named Princess X. And one of them draws the pictures and the other one mostly writes the stories. And then basically one day when they're about 14 or so, the one who did the drawing gets into a car accident, her car falls in the water, and her body is not found until way, way later, when it's like barely even recognizable. And then fast forward 3 years later, and the girl who is still alive suddenly starts seeing Princess X come up everywhere. Like, suddenly there are stickers of Princess X, and then there's an entire webcomic about it. So so basically this is a thriller that is super, super interesting, and kind of creepy. I listened to it on audiobook, so like, it was pretty creepy. I felt really weird driving to work while it was still dark out, and like, and listening to it. But yeah, it definitely met my expectations. Like, obviously I've read some, more thought-provoking thrillers before, so this isn't quite, like, if you read a lot of psychological thrillers, this one might be a little bit tame for you, but I really, really enjoyed it. And the last book that I read in the first half of May, which I stayed up way too late last night finishing off, because I seriously was waiting 3 years for this book, and I waited 5 years for the previous installment in the series, and I will probably have to wait at least 3 years for the next one, and that is Firebrand by Kristen Britton. This is the 6th book in the Green Rider series, which is seriously one of my favorite series in the whole wide world. So basically this series takes place in a fantasy world and follows this Green Rider named Kerrigan, and Green Riders are basically the King's Messenger Service, but in addition to just delivering messages, they do all kinds of hardcore shit. Like, they're not soldiers, but they're pretty much almost as capable. Like, they're fucking hardcore. And so this chick has gone through so much shit in this series, and there are so many amazing characters in this and everything. Like, seriously, if you like high fantasy, like, please check this out if you haven't. Like, I love this series so much. So anyway, I think this might actually be my favorite installment in the series so far, just because a lot of the characters play a bigger part in it. A lot of the conflicts just, like, they face thing after thing that just wrecks everything, and it's insane. And then, of course, the book left me wanting more, even without a cliffhanger, which is usually the style of this series. Only one of the books has a cliffhanger, and that cliffhanger upset me greatly until the next book came out, because I had to wait 5 years. But I especially, in this book, I really liked the fact that the main character's best friend, Estrel, was actually a major character in this one. She has been a fairly minor character throughout the series, like she's barely in it, but then in this one she actually plays a huge role. She spends almost the entire book with Kerrigan, like, on their adventure, and as you would expect from best friends, they bicker and they fight, like not everything's just them happily holding hands or anything. And so it's just so great. I loved it. And seriously, just, like, do yourself a favor and check this series out. So there you have it, folks. Those are my books that I read in the first half of May. Please let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. I would love to hear what you think, and let me know what you have read as well so far this month that you've really liked. And I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!